Welcome to this episode of The World of Big Ideas. Today I am joined by Nate Bradley, who is a bit of an expert in the world of all things crypto and blockchain, and it is high time that I had a catch-up on this subject. So it is great to welcome you to the show, Nate. How are you doing? Where are you tuning in from? How's life on your side?
Great. Fantastic. Thanks for having me. I'm talking to you from just north of Philadelphia today.
Great. Are you ready to just dive straight into it?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I love that. I love how coordinated we are as well today, as if our team said, make sure you wear exactly the same coat with exactly the same shirt. All right, well,
it's funny.
Nate, first question for you has to be, why have you got so deep into crypto? Why is this a world that you found yourself being an expert in?
Well, I was really fortunate early in my career to have a gentleman by the name of Matthew Mellon on my board of directors. He was on the board of AudioEye. AudioEye was a company that specialized in solving the internet and mobile websites for people with disabilities. And in that process, Matthew Mellon joined the board. He wanted Bitcoin to be a currency that was accessible to people with disabilities. Something that if I took $100 bill or a $1 bill and you put one in each pocket and close your eyes, it's hard to tell. It's impossible to tell which bill you have in your hand, and you always have to ask for help, which is a violation of here in America, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we built a technology that solved for that, and it attracted a world-class board of directors. Matthew was on that board, and just in between times, as we're waiting for other members to arrive or in the lobby in the kind of interim time that you have with your board members, we had discussions about Bitcoin. And he was the founder. If those are not familiar, he unfortunately passed away, but his background was including the founding of Coinbase, founding of Ripple. He's one of the founding investors in those companies. And he taught me that the currency was rather perfect in that it was decentralized. It also didn't have the flaw of many government-backed currencies that, Nixon took us off the gold standard here in the United States, meaning that we were out of gold to back our currency. So we just went off the standard. And that largely leaves then belief as the driving force behind the value of currency. And of course, there's trading function and other functions that determine that price, but ultimately a belief. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin having a scarcity model where an equation is being solved by miners, and as miners solve the problem, they take the chain to the next coin, and each coin being minted it represents a value of a solution to a problem that's harder and harder to solve. And as that problem presents itself over and over and over to miners whom solve it, the compute power is extensively higher every single iteration.
Firstly, I had no idea that part of the initial concept behind this was to help people with disabilities who couldn't distinguish between notes. That's a fascinating angle. I had no idea about that. So going through then to this concept of the digital currency and the many benefits that it might have, talk to me a little bit more about this mining thing. For someone who hasn't ever come across Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies before, what do you mean by Bitcoin is mined? How does that work?
Well, computers seek to solve the problem, and by solving the problem, they're able to claim a coin on the chain. And so Bitcoins, as they are minted or mined, the miners are training their computers to solve the problem in the chain. And so with respect to that, each individual data center or compute power, and people are using computer arrays. They can use compute power really of all types, but the most effective obviously are using the highest horsepower processing, and memory comes into play as well. So you want a high performance computing environment, and that's a bit of a haves and have-nots. The largest miner in the United States is a public company. There is obviously a resource requirement both in power and in computers. And so that becomes an issue with respect to Bitcoin, is that large entities and entities that have the compute power are obviously the ones able to mint the coin. So it's a little bit, off of the decentralized model where everyone could participate, or that there would be a kind of a decentralization, being that the owners move from owner to owner. That is indeed the case with Bitcoin. The one problem you see coming is that it's power rich, and it's also resource rich, and that's contrary to the original vision of it.
So when we create Bitcoins, there is a problem, a mathematical problem that is out there. Anyone can solve it if they have enough computing power.
That's correct.
And the idea is you apply the processing power of your computers to solve this problem. And as the clock ticks through the future, there's like timestamps in time where parts of that problem or that whole problem have been solved. I've sort of got that right. And that creates Bitcoin.
Each coin is a solution. Yes.
So then here's a good question as we start to get into the nitty-gritty of this. For the regular person, I'm sitting here with a computer. Is there any world where I can apply the processing power of my computer to go and mine Bitcoin?
There is. So you're able to serve that function, and you hear about people hijacking, compute power to do so. Remember, it's a dedicated process, and the process, running off of a individual computer at this point may be futile. You can certainly mine, but can you mint? Is the question.
What's the difference?
Mining is seeking the solution. Minting is found the solution, and are minting a coin. You're claiming a Bitcoin, and
like one whole Bitcoin every time you get a solution.
So with respect to the incremental value of Bitcoin, every single coin that is minted has a value of 1. There is just 1 Bitcoin for each solution. The fractional values that you see happen in the trading of Bitcoin. So there is a giant secondary market. And as the Bitcoins are traded back and forth, that's where they get fractional interest, and the actual coins themselves are represented in your wallet in a fractional interest in some cases, where you don't own the whole coin.
Okay, I think I'm with you. So if I am mining a coin, do I get any payout on that, or is it only when the coin is actually minted?
Oh, so the flow is the reverse. It is very expensive to mine. It is expensive to mine. You need to have hardware, dedicated software and hardware to be successful. You also need compute power. That processing environment is only as good as its processor. So as you look at the evolution of that, it's hard to compete against miners that are using superior computer arrays if you're an individual practitioner. So that's what I was talking about, where it has become a bit elitist with respect to mining because of the power requirement and the hardware requirement. That becomes a barrier to entry to general populace just coming on and mining for Bitcoin. So the gating factors are your access to power, your access to compute power. With respect to the environment, there's typically a coolant requirement as well when you talk about high performance computing, and that's where you get into water and other resources that are required in these high performance computing environments. These are the most competitive mining environments.
Whenever I think about cryptocurrency in general, I always think about this idea of a decentralized utopian idea where me and you can trade and we can mine freely, and we don't have a bank or a financial institution in the way of us making these transfers. So do you think there's like a little bit of a juxtaposition developing now where we see this blockchain tech as being, for the people, this ability to have free movement and free market, but we're already falling into this similar trap where a very small percentage of people actually have the infrastructural capabilities to create and mine this. And I'm interested in asking your thoughts, because you're one of the few people that was really aware, not just from a very early age coming through this development, but you were also aware of the science and the maths behind what the point of this was. So how do you feel watching this from start to where we are now, what it was supposed to be and where it's ending up becoming?
It's phenomenal. The trust of it, and the as you said, the kind of peer-to-peer ability to use a currency without a bank is utopian. That is where we should aspire to take a currency on a worldwide basis. Currency conversion is a ripoff. There's so many other things. As you travel or as you become kind of globally aware of the trade values, the conversion values, and people trade on the arbitrage of these things. So there's secondary markets, which make it ultra complex. So in cutting through that and making it simplistic, having a simple solution worldwide where I could trust that what you gave me has a valuation, and the valuation of the goods and services I receive are kind of also riding along a kind of a fair continuum. So I think in that way it's brilliant. With respect to its evolution, less than 5% of Americans trust it as in their portfolios. It is foregoing, still massively written about and sought to be understood by arguably millions, but adopted by the kind of pioneering few. And so that's where there's a huge opportunity, and where Bitcoin could kind of break through that problem that you just mentioned about resources is shared resources, open source, models. There's a number of open source models that would allow for participation. There's so much economy around it. When you eliminate all the middlemen and all the secondary and all the other market accoutrements of our current system, including the tax code, the Bitcoin offers us something complex, but that is consumable, and that has a breakthrough nature, a global breakthrough on commerce, a currency that's going nowhere. We've seen it kind of survive now. Call it the fits and starts of being in infancy. It's now a teenager, or entering its teen, kind of progress. This is not a mature currency, and that's what's so incredible about it. It has 95% to go here in America, but it feels like it's so much bigger. And that's because of the nature of the breakthrough. It changes many things in many good ways. Also, the immutability of it. We've had so much corruption infect our systems, and immutability, having an open ledger. It's like the audit that we've always wanted on our government, on each other in businesses. The idea of immutable records, and that kind of forensic accounting that we all get as part of the use of a ledger or a currency that has a permanent immutable trail. So in that way, it's also attractive, and it could cut into corruption, could open your eyes to government spending in other areas if you would only adopt the currency.
I was told once in a debate about whether cryptocurrency was a shady tool used for criminals all over the world. And I was told once by a forensic accountant that said, she said, to be honest, there's nothing better than cryptocurrency if you're looking to actually target criminal or dodgy behavior, because it is the ultimate ability that once you see a purchase and you can tie a physical purchase to a wallet address, there's nothing better for an investigator than to be able to have that insight. So I kind of see you nodding along. You'd agree with that in terms of the corruption argument, that cryptocurrencies in general might solve more problems than they would bring.
Yeah, well, the bandits, having a direct currency, they didn't have a middleman, so they don't have a watchdog on them. And that was the kind of the beauty in the very beginning for them, is they could hide behind a wallet or an address. And I think you find that address harder to move away from a person or identity or a company. That's just the technology in its infancy. We had Napster before we had iTunes. Napster was clandestine. It was about stealing people's copyrights and, moving files off of your computer onto mine and then monetizing, and so that system had a long way to go before it became iTunes. But we all know now, if you hear a hit song, where you could go get it, for a quarter. And, the idea that the technology breakthrough, it is a breakthrough for bandits, as clandestine operators or illegal people, as much as it is a tool for the government and for the police and for the FBI. So the idea that the breakthrough is a breakthrough, it helps everybody equally. And if you have a illegal, will in your company or your person, you're going to have a tool there to utilize, and that's going to be harder and harder to separate yourself from a wallet. We'll get better at making the community accountable for the use of the technology, and that's where companies have to kind of turn the page and realize, it was imperfect as it came out. It was a tool used by people that wanted to launder. I think FTX probably set the whole system back 10 years because you couldn't so much as say coin or token without people feeling uncomfortable or worried about your business model or about how you're using the technology.
There are so many tools out there as well, and I want to talk about the differences between coins, things like Bitcoin against Ethereum, against Solana, what differentiates them. But before we go into that, why do you think, as we talk to each other right now, we are looking at an all-time high? What is it that you think has triggered such a repeat frenzy into buying right now?
Well, there's been a lot of issues surrounding Bitcoin that are regulatory, have nothing to do with the technology, but more the socioeconomic and political environments that we're in. And you could see that at least in their verbiage or their promise, and always coming into a new political cycle with new political leaders in America. One of the great things about our country is that we can change. 4 years ago, and for the last 4 years of the current administration, there's been a lot of jump balls or questions. If you look at Ripple and Coinbase, their litigation, plowing a road for all of us, all of those executives involved are underpaid and underappreciated, in my view, just in terms of the amount of plowing that those companies have had to do on behalf of a larger community of companies that are looking to take advantage of Bitcoin. But
what do you mean by that? Just when you talk about this plowing, can you expand on what you mean by that?
So there's heavy litigation, where the SEC, Securities Administration here in America, has litigated against public companies and really challenged the position of Bitcoin as a security. Coins themselves, if they are backed by real estate or backed by precious metals or baseball cards, or there's this discussion of where does the baseball card market stop and securities start. And some of this has been a gray area. You have conventions dedicated to the trading of stamps and collectibles, but those aren't considered securities, but yet a Bitcoin backed security was a security. And so there was a lot of discussion back and forth, and there's a lot of good discussion on both sides. The ability for people to take advantage or misuse this technology largely, can be harnessed by or curtailed by the policies of a government or the use of taxation and other mechanisms to curtail its use. So as this new administration comes in and at least verbally has a backing or the understanding that we're going to discover more about what these currencies can do for the federal government and for individuals, that we're going to open it up and be able to do that exploration without having so much ambiguity. It's not that there shouldn't be laws and regulations and use cases. Real estate should obviously, fall under real estate law and all the accoutrements, all the documentation that protects us and owners and buyers. These things can't be just bypassed because we have a coin that can, and so that's where it comes down to.
That's a fascinating insight. So you think that one of the big reasons why we're seeing this frenzy again, as this volatile market, it's up one day, it's down the next. Right now we are in Bitcoin fever again. You think that one of the key developments is this legal landscape starting to become less ambiguous. It's starting to settle a little bit. What else is there on your mind that you would point to as being a reason why it's going through the roof right now?
Adoption. So when you look at that 5%, in a minority that went through a crypto winter where everyone was, almost pointing the finger back to say, "Oh, I told you it was not, there was no value there," and the people that missed it the first time, having a little bit, "I told you so." And then now to see it, survive that, come back even stronger, you get the impression that not only is it not going away, but that it's going to be part of the solutions moving forward. So there's a lot of excitement about that. I think also adoption, when you see, the amount of wealth that was created and people having an alternative investment that's outperforming some of the traditional ones. If you were a Bitcoin owner, competing against someone that has a 401k as an example, the Bitcoin owner is laughing all the way to the bank. And when we don't, in society, that the haves and have-nots doesn't last very long. We tend to gravitate towards solutions that build wealth and that have inherent value. So Bitcoin wins, and we start to adopt it. And I think adoption is the next phase of this, where you go from a minority to a majority utilization. This becomes a very exciting prospect, especially for those that came in early. It's kind of like owning Microsoft early. Same effect. The years that you were early are going to represent a lot of value for those owners, in my opinion.
I'd agree with that. And for many, I think they get into this space on the rides up, right? Because we're looking at Bitcoin. Last time I checked, I don't know, it's like $92,000 or something. And as we look at an all-time high, and I put myself in the same bucket here. When we look at an all-time high, that's usually the place where people want to get in. So I remember coming in, the first time I bought Bitcoin was in 2018. But of course, I kind of bought in on the hype moment, right? And then us retail investors, you kind of buy on a peak, and then guess what? You go into a crypto winter, and then you spend the next year going, "Oh my God, this was the silliest thing I've ever done." And I think that's kind of a necessary process for all of us to go through. And I lay this out for a really good reason. So obviously the price of these cryptocurrencies has now recovered, and it's now higher, of course, than it was in 2018. But for people like myself who might have bought into, say, like NFTs, right? So I really loved NFT technology. I thought it was really, really cool. I got in and I bought a bunch, and clearly, like the rest of the world, a lot of that turned to dust, and it was really kind of quote unquote a terrible use of money and investment and time. The question I have for you about NFTs as we start to talk about these tools is to say, do you see a world where, similar to what Bitcoin's done, we see a resurgence and a comeback in NFT technology as well? Or do you think they're very, very different tools and NFTs are out?
No, NFTs are phenomenal. They have a life cycle that would put them behind Bitcoin. Remember, so they're younger, in their life cycle. the technology, and again, it comes down to belief. We have a herd mentality. You hear, oh, NFTs are trash. Look at what happened to FTX. That was not even related to NFTs. It was the misuse of currency and dark pools, for corruption. It doesn't put a black eye on NFTs whatsoever, but the public perception took a heavy hit, and I would tell you that the utility and the NFT is your future ticket. It's your ticket to an event. It's the proof of your education. There is the mintable utility coin. And I have, as a disclaimer, a huge interest in this space. I mean, I run a public company dedicated to this. So I believe wholeheartedly that the NFT phenomenon gave you a glimpse of the future. And that flashpoint where it entered, too many people utilized it. An NFT can mint any object immutably. If you're Alec Monopoly, or if you're the artist Banksy, I would argue that your NFT inventory is incredibly valuable, that you should continue to cultivate and grow that part of your art, of your production. But as consumers, we get caught in this herd mentality, or the backbiting around NFTs, and really it's down to the artist. What happened there was a great deal of non-quality or low-quality art entered the market in the form of NFTs and were sold as objects. Now, the fact that you could package up trash and price it and sell it was the miracle, but the fact that you put trash in there and something that didn't have value, or something that was easy to create, or said, that's like an image or a clip art, that can't be a valuable thing. You're into the discussion of art itself. Go to a gallery with any number of friends and discuss the value of the art on the wall. We have an eye of the beholder type function in art that makes it fascinating, but also in some cases extremely valuable. If art brings you to tears, if it brings your emotions out, it's done its job. And each of us are different with respect to that. Someone might laugh and flip it off and figure that they don't get it and never understand it and would never buy it. And someone else might pay millions of dollars for how it makes them feel. And so we rushed into the NFT space with too much low quality content wrapped in this incredible wrapper. And we failed to see that the wrapper itself was the breakthrough, the smart contract. Now, if you're selling anything and you have ever called a lawyer to say, I want to sell this, but I need a lawyer to lawyer me up so that I can engage with this other group, and you have a third party and a timeline outside of your control, imagine having a smart contract in an NFT that you could replicate over and over and over and over and be exquisitely lawyered up, to have a lawyer on inside the product, have a policy inside the product, to have an agreement inside the product, and also to transact it immediately and pay all the parties that need to be paid immediately. Not chasing money, not invoicing you and calling you later and getting screwed, or all the things that happen in life. We solved it with an NFT.
You're preaching to the choir here. My personal feeling towards NFTs, and again, I've been involved in it. I tested making my own as an artist. I managed to get a few really interesting things happening, where like an NFT owner would get like a flight out to come and see a show at South by Southwest, and I managed to do all these really cool things with it. And then what I found really interesting is in the crash, everyone kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and it had such bad press, and a lot of people that were involved with them got ostracized as well. And I was never that deep into it, but I was enough to feel some of that exposure. Now, here's something I'd love to run past you, because it really goes into everything you were just saying. In my world, for as a recording artist making music, when we go and try to get paid for our song usage, it's a nightmare, because if I have a song that was used on like the F1 in Japan, that gets collected by a collection society in Japan, paid through to some holding company. There's some deal with like the European wing, who then takes an admin fee and pays it into the UK collector, and then the UK collector has to look and just double check that all of the registrations and the song codes and the song artists are all the same and the percentages are the same, and blah 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 blah. And eventually one day, 3 years later, you might get a check for like, I don't know, some ambiguous percentage of what was actually earned. So when I think about NFTs and I think about this blockchain tech, I always think about the music industry, where you have songs which are assets in themselves, with multiple songwriters, with multiple splits, and that also has to be split between publishing companies, and it also has to be split between record labels, and it might also involve more splits on who owns the master. So before you even begin, you have this unbelievably complicated web of people that need to get paid. So I always look at this and go, well, if you had one smart contract and you have a unique identifier for the songwriters, a unique identifier for the publisher and label, you just set it in stone and you go, right, anytime $1 is earned from this, it gets distributed like this. No international rules or changes or admin costs. If everyone agrees and they go, yeah, that's how the contract should go. And it's the same for, I see a lot of work being done in climate concerns for manufacture, where people want to see an open ledger for parts, where are they made, what CO2 emissions were made. And NFT seem to be making this publicly verifiable ledger of how products are created in a way that people could attest that they can trust their company. So I think we're kind of on the same page, but if you were to play devil's advocate, do you see why people are so negative about NFTs and so ready to kind of get the hatchets out?
Well, yeah, the negativity I think is curtailed quite a bit. I think you would encounter an NFT and not know it. With respect to a ticket to an event, or something more mundane, or something more perfunctory in our society, where it solves a problem for everyone that uses it. To your point about music, my wife is a musician. She was number one in folk in South Korea, but the remuneration for artists is it's terrible, and quite frankly, with the amount of talent that she brings to her art, you would think that there is a fair payment, or a paymaster that would understand, how talented you are and pay you accordingly. And we all know that doesn't exist. We've also seen the corruption and the character revealed within some of these systems that are paying artists, and billionaires at the top, and artists with struggling at a level we've never seen before. And you have to tour, and you see one of the most successful acts being tied to a tour, because that's the only way that you can keep it fair. And as soon as you enter that digital realm, it is abuse, and we all know it. And so that needs to be fixed, and we have the solution. That the beauty of in so many things you just said. I mean, in energy, to claim a carbon credit, to trust a carbon credit, to get all the fraud out of that system, where we're actually trying to save the planet, but there's a financial mechanism people want to take advantage of instead of doing the right by the planet. These are immutable records. These are things where you could see trees planted, use satellite imagery, see the carbon sequestered to a building, have the verifiable facts in immutable record that provides for both the valuation, the contractual legalities around a transaction, and most importantly, the payment. The structure, you mentioned the payment structure. We, in various levels, in various industries, the level of corruption and trust, anytime you have to trust a human being to be the paymaster, there is corruption that enters. And we don't need any more proof of this. We don't need to see it again and again and again. We know that we have a solution that could keep it fair and remunerate, artists. You mentioned art, art in the traditional sense, in music in another sense of art. These are all professions that we enjoy as human beings, but we have let a system fail artists in terms of how they're remunerated. So NFTs are a breakthrough. It's a solution in so many areas, high science down to selling a piece of street art. And we just need to embrace the solution. All of the naysayers or haters around it simply don't understand it. And that's not to disparage anybody, but to simply say that it is a function of education that will drive the adoption of these solutions. And the smarter we get, the more we'll use it.
What's your wife's artist name on Spotify for us that want to listen?
Sonia Choi.
Because here's a classic to finish this point before asking you what it is about certain cryptos that make this possible. But for Sonia, if I decided to pay my whatever 10, 15 quid a month to Spotify, but all I listened to was your wife's music, right? I would hope that of the money that Spotify would distribute to artists, if I only listen to them, I would hope that the share would go to them, but it doesn't at all, right? And this is
No.
I like this example because it's a really fundamental and easy to follow idea that if I went onto Spotify to listen to your wife, the overwhelming probability is that Taylor Swift would earn 10 times more money than your wife would, because that's how the distribution mechanisms work.
That's
because
right.
distribution, to be fair to Spotify, is very, very complicated. So I'm not saying, Spotify are bad or anything, but I'm saying that the distribution mechanism for funds is very difficult, and I think that this does solve a lot of problems. So the next question I want to move on to is, why is it that some coins, if we want to call them that, why is it that some coins or blockchains can do things like this? For example, can Bitcoin have contracts and these clever things, or is that only accessible to things like Ethereum or Solana?
So Bitcoin has started now. It's the premium in the marketplace for utility, and there is a level 2 there that allows you to do that. Some of the other coins, Ethereum being so flexible for developers, and really being the developer's coin, call it, the ability to have layers and layers and private and other functions of the blockchain that are pretty phenomenal. So Ethereum taking a lead there of having, their niche around developer environments that are very friendly for the use of blockchain utilities. So as a user of that, there's a lot of benefits. The pricing around Bitcoin and the fact that it is the dominant currency coin actually gives it, from an adoption base, advantages, but also disadvantages in terms of the costs. The cost as a developer to use Bitcoin is like a premium. Down from that, Solana and some of the other coins, they all give you a level of flexibility. And I would say largely on the developer side, to make calls, to make solutions, to make smart contracts, to mint them. And then there's things like Chia. Chia is a blockchain, actually the world's largest, and it has a focus around greenness. It's about using compute power that's already being utilized, so it's not ramping up utilization in the same format. It's a space model, so it's using disk space as opposed to compute power. So there's a number of chains that have focused on either their greenness, and Ethereum countered that with a low consumption model that uses less power. And this will be the drawback to using blockchain is the amount of plugged in devices in the chain. You're not using a single data center. You're not using a single compute power set. You're using an array, an incredible growing array. And that's why people don't like it from an energy standpoint. One of the keys will be sustainability in those energy streams, having sustainable, renewable energies, hydro. Certainly the idea that you're able to have more and more public facing open source environments that can be utilized for utility coin production.
And so when you say utility coin production, you're talking about the
NFTs.
Developer-friendly blockchains that allow the development of decentralized apps on them.
Correct. Yeah. So not only does this, speak to our ability to transact, so you can transact in Bitcoin in a growing number of environments, but behind the scenes, the ability to use blockchain utilities to create systems to create solutions. Take a credential from your university being minted in the form of a coin. The utility to you as the user is to prove your education. The utility as an employer is to check it without having to call the school. The ability to have that coin also index my entire works while I was on campus, while I was a member of the school. Everything that I did when I was on the Jumbotron, when I was on, the recorded sessions of me in a team environment, anything that I did on campus indexed for me in a little bat belt, utility that I can open up and I can engage with all my professors, my alumni, everything that's part of that school experience in a coin. And that's what we'll see in the future is bundles that are very hyper personal, that are immutable and that start to represent our identity and our accomplishments and qualify us in the future.
I really like this idea of honesty and transparency and being able to reconcile things like that. People can lie about their education. People can do all kinds of nefarious things and get away with it. Now, one question I might have to you, again, just playing devil's advocate, is what would you say to people who might listen to that and think, this really scary world where things like that are immutable and they're always there? What if every social media post was immutable and always there? What if things I didn't want to be public are immutable, never to be erased on the blockchain? It's what do you think about those who find this a little bit daunting, a little bit scary?
Mm-hmm. Well, what's scarier is the perception that you have security or you have privacy when you do not. There's the overt and the covert. We're getting hit with a lot of covert right now, and any individual that says that they're entirely unplugged or off the grid, that's more power to you. That's an effort these days. That's a tremendous effort, an effort that most individuals aren't willing to undertake. So we're largely plugged in. Our data's plugged in. Our data's been stolen, taken from us. Your identities in America has been stolen 3 times by the time you're 25 years old in this country. There is a perception of having a privacy, and then there's actually having it. There's also, with respect to these immutable records, improving your education. This was something that you pronounced. You go and achieve, a degree for the purpose of pronouncing it, in the community as your skill set or as your profession. So some things that become immutable and protect you, I would argue having the truth is good for everyone involved, employers and for the employed, to level the playing field, to have fairness. It's hard to have fairness when so many corrupt things interrupt that pathway for us. So I would say that the use of the blockchain and having immutable records should be discussed. That should be a privacy-centric process that does preserve individual privacy, personally identifiable information, our safety, our security, our location, the location of our family. All of these things are vital to our protection and to our security. But we do not have to expose these things to immutable records or the use of blockchain. Think of it like a driver's license or things that you would want the community to pronounce that you're capable of driving and therefore safe to be on the roads. There's certain areas where we intersect, where we have to be a community. And when we do so, we should have records that we can trust and people that we can trust around us. And I think that we need to get better at that. And I think that there's a lot of fakers. There's a lot of clandestine activities, nepotism, other things that interfere with having a fair playing field. And democracy and capitalism will be perfected in these environments where we have true fairness. And, so I would argue those things. Of course, it's daunting. It's change. So people fear the change. In this case, I think we should embrace the new technologies, build them in a way that protects the privacy, even perfects the privacy. But let's not have a delusion of privacy when it's, covertly taken from us. I'd rather have overt systems that we understand how they work and that we can participate in when we choose.
That's a deep one. clandestine effects on our privacy, thinking we have it when we really don't. That's worth thinking about. I want to ask you a question. Whilst I know that I don't have too much longer with you, but a question about staking. And whilst it's a little bit of a sidestep, I wanted to touch on your idea where you don't necessarily have to have a bank or someone in between you when you're making transfers and transactions between people. Whether that is information, like we just spoke about, or whether that is financial remuneration, where I can have a fiat currency and put it in a bank and make interest because that bank might loan it out and then I can earn on that money, or whether I have cryptocurrencies and I can stake them and that can earn me money. I've never really understood how that works. So my question to you is, I know that if I put my money in a bank, they can split it up and they can multiply my dollar by lots more dollars and rent it to 3 or 4 other people, and that kind of fractional reserve banking, I realize that's a problem. And I think a lot of us can see that that's not a good way to go. But when I'm looking at Ethereum or Bitcoin or Solana or whatever, how does staking work? Where does the money come from if it's not being rented out to somewhere? How does the staking system function?
So in dark pools, and you know, when you change dollars to coin, where does the money go? And you know, so this is where the dark pool. So there's cash available, and these organizations function no differently than how a bank does. When they have currency and they're able to deploy it unfettered. The problem is a call, right? So if there's a call on that bank, I have to distribute cash, and if I don't have it because have it staked, you know, it is missing, and so that's the FTX kind of phenomenon. They created huge dark pools. They took money, exchanged it for coin, but when they did so, they created a dark pool of cash, and how you manage through that, you know, this is kind of central to decentralization, is this discussion. When you centralize it, when you get an intermediary that stakes it, claims it, now is in between you and the function. This is the exact opposite of what we tried to attempt to do with decentralized currencies, to where you would trade me Bitcoin for for a product, and we know the value, and I provide and you provide, and you can pay me and remunerate me. The idea that we have a system here that lends itself to peer-to-peer exchanges doesn't mean a third party can't step in between us and once again create the issue. And so again, not to say that those are all bad, and we need them now because of the fractional interest is almost a requirement for almost everyone. So we're going to have these intermediary players, and their policies, though, because it's blockchain, the good ones are publishing great policy. They're open. You can see their ledgers. You know, all of that is important for the maintenance of the decentralized currencies. So the things to avoid are when third parties step between, they're lesser known, they're not with good policy, you can't audit it, you can't see it. That's the opposite of what was attempted to be done with decentralized currency. So the things to look out for here are any intermediary that you do not understand what they're doing with that staking or with the individual cash outlays. Those that have open policies and have open ledgers can do that to perfection. But the more you obfuscate that, the lack of understanding of it could cause a problem in the future. So that would be my best answer.
And it is a good answer, and I think the answers you give just show the level of understanding that you have for this subject. Now, at risk of sounding like an idiot, I'm going to have to ask you to explain as if I'm like a 5-year-old, because there's still something that I fundamentally don't understand, and I have to just go there. It's like, I have Ethereum, I stake it with someone, crypto.com or a Binance or a whatever, or I do it within the MetaMask wallet, or I stake it somewhere, I'm still not quite sure how that just multiplies into more Ethereum. Like, where does it come from? Who's behind using it? Are you telling me that whether it's MetaMask or Binance or crypto.com or whoever, they are taking my money, using it to invest in like fiat situations, turning it into dollars, investing it into real estate or whatever, and then they're paying me back an extra amount of Ethereum? Is that what you mean? There's a fiat transfer that happens in the middle of this?
Yes, there is. And with respect to that, that's where it comes down to the operator, right? It comes down to the trust of the brand and the understanding of the process behind that. The more opaque that it is, the more you can guarantee that there is a fluidity in that strategy, so that someone could change their strategy at will. That is the power of control. If you don't state your message, mission, and process, but you take the money and you're allowed to change it, you're like a hedge fund. And the crypto weather has been very good. So the outcomes are good. There is the ability for when you pool your money with others in a larger system, and that larger system can leverage it. It's no different than a credit card processor or anybody else. They are pooling your activities for the purpose of utilization on the macro, or the benefits that the many bring to the few in the management of that scenario.
But I guess you run into that problem that if we're all staking our cash and we have someone somewhere, even if it's a big infrastructural army of investors, if there is a downturn, and like you say, there's a call where all of us go, hey, I've got all of this Solana staked in my wallet and I'd like to unstake it now. And they go, yeah, about that. We were mostly exposed in real estate and there's been a housing crash and we can't pay that money back. So is what you're saying, am I jumping too much to a conclusion to say that if you are staking your cash somewhere, there is always an element that can be risked and not returned?
Of course, yeah. And I think that, the stability of Bitcoin becomes it's been a phenomenon. Those individuals that held it and just simply rode it are rewarded for that. No different than, other stocks or bonds, that you made the right choice around. In this case, you have the volatility and you have the trust of the provider. And so when you look at that, when you stake something, you're staking it, and it takes you 1 degree away from liquidity. You have 1 hop to complete before liquidity, and it is the release of the stake, back to you, and hopefully in greater quantity. But the fact that you're staking it puts you in a pool, and that pool is being managed, is very fundamentally similar to what we've experienced with other currencies or other systems.
Fascinating. And then we almost come full circle back to the idea of centralized finance. I mean, this has been a really eye-opening conversation for me, Nate, and I really thank you for taking the time to jump on this, because I would like to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to keep doing this every now and again to have a little bit of an update on things that are happening in the crypto world, because I would like to keep on top of it myself and obviously to share it with the listeners as we go. My last question to you as we round up this first episode is, in your opinion, what do you think that the mass adoption looks like over the next, say, 5 to 10 years? And where do you think we're going to be when me and you speak in that time frame? What do you think the big changes are going to be if you could predict the future?
Yeah, I think NFTs make a comeback in a huge way. I think utility coins, regardless of who's minting them on which chain, that they become part of society. And then the adoption of Bitcoin as a currency continues to proliferate, and that'll drag the other currencies along. And certainly, I think with respect to business operations, the acceptance, to buy a car, to buy clothing, you're going to see more and more next to the Visa symbol, the Bitcoin symbol, just in terms of adoption from a retail standpoint.
Okay, I do have one last question. I'm sorry. Last question
no problem.
Would be, to some listeners, they will look at fiat currencies, dollar, pounds, euros, and they will see that through human history there needs to be a centralized person on the control wheels. So then there needs to be someone to adjust inflation rates, adjust interest rates, because humans and human nature and the way economy and societies work, there has to be someone with a foot tapping the brakes and someone tapping the accelerator to keep things stable and to adjust as economic weathers change, right? So one argument would be to say the reason why Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies will definitely fail is because there is no one at the helm to help adjust these control mechanisms. What would you say to that?
Well, I think we've proven out over the last period some of those concerns. So its longevity proves it out. Also, with the centralized currencies, you can look at Argentina or other areas to where that is equally as faulty or flawed a model. The beauty of Bitcoin is it's truly global. It's a universal currency. It does not have war. It does not have politics. It does not have poverty. It does not have a lot of the issues that plague these individual countries that proffer to have stable currencies. So as we make our bets of where we place our value, you'll find that Bitcoin, with its mathematical model and its decentralized nature, removes a lot of the ambiguity, fear. Many of those levers that are pulled for socioeconomic reasons that are outside of currency. And so inflation and other things that infect the currencies, Bitcoin is not immune to them, but it has a resilience and a disposition that is different. And as people come to understand its mathematical brilliance, I think that people gravitate towards it because it can be trusted, and that it is a scenario where there isn't someone pulling the lever left or right or adjusting that model. It is truly us in commerce. And if you believe in capitalism and in some sense our democratic societies really function well around a decentralized currency. And again, it can compete with the others, but it has a lot of fundamental advantages to where it becomes the ultimate in that time period you're discussing, 5 to 10 years, dominant.
You up for it again? 5 to 10 years?
Yes.
We'll do this again?
Oh, come on. Yeah. Hopefully, God willing, I would love to do it.
Nate, the insights you've given in this episode alone have been incredible. I very much look forward to touching base with you again in the future. Thank you for taking the time to do this, most importantly. I hope you have an amazing week, and I hope you have an amazing next 5 to 10 years. Send your wife my best of luck with her artist career as well. I'll be getting on Spotify, as I'm sure everyone else will be who's listening, and I will look forward to seeing you again, hopefully not too far down the road.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. See you soon.
All right, thank you.